Look at this. Someone made a teepee structure out of aspen trunks, as I understand it. I think they're mostly aspen. Mark and I got here to do some filming, and so we're using it as our home base. We laid down a tarp and have all our gear inside. Pretty badass. Hello from Winter Wonderland. So I'm visiting my good friend Mark, who you know from my previous videos, and he lives in Woodland Park, and it's been snowing here quite a bit. So I came down for a visit because I got a new toy, the 16 to 35, and I thought it'd be fun to come out and put it through its paces a little bit. When I was in Costa Rica earlier this year, unfortunately our house was broken into and we even had security. One of the lenses that was stolen was my 16 to 35 Mark I. The Mark II is finally out and I absolutely love it. I've got to play around with it for about a month and I want to tell you what I've learned about it. So the Mark I is already an outstanding piece of gear. It's probably one of, if not the best quality 16 to 35s you can get. The Mark II, it's basically everything you would expect from the G Master lineup of lenses. So from a weight standpoint, the Mark I is 680 grams and the Mark II is 547 grams. It doesn't sound like a lot, but when you hold each of them in your hand, you can actually feel a difference. It's smaller, it's lighter. For me, the saving in size is huge because I tend to travel with more gear than I need. And so every little ounce that I can save as weight on my back is something I'm really grateful for. And same thing about the size. The smaller your lenses get, the more room you have in your bag for other things that you want to bring. On the Mark II, you also have got 2 custom buttons instead of 1 that you can assign to any function that you want. The aperture ring can now be set to either smooth or click. Right here, you can set the click to off. And now when you turn this, it's nice and smooth. The edge-to-edge sharpness of this camera, whereas the Mark I, you could see a little bit of softness on the edges when you were all the way at 2.8. You can definitely see a difference when you're comparing side by side, especially wide open from edge to edge. You get improved image quality with the new Mark IIs. The minimum focus distance has been improved. It's now at 22 centimeters, which has been upgraded from previously 28 centimeters on the Mark I. All right, so here I am at the minimum focus distance of 22 centimeters, and I'm at 35 millimeter focal length, pulling out to 16, and I'm still 22 centimeters away. A couple other features that I really appreciate are, one, focus breathing with this lens has been almost completely eliminated, and that's without using focus breathing compensation on some of the newer Sony Alpha cameras. Another feature that I really appreciate is that this lens is essentially parfocal, which means that if you're in manual focus and you're at 35 millimeters and you get your focus spot on, and then you adjust your zoom ring so you're at 16 millimeters, you're still gonna be tack sharp and exactly in focus, which is not the case if the lens is not parfocal. So right now I'm doing manual focus on Mark. I'm getting focus until I see focus peaking right on his sunglasses. I can even see me reflected in his sunglasses. Yep, right there. All right, and now we're at 35 right now, and when I go out to 16, he's still perfectly in focus. Autofocus on the Mark I was already really good, and autofocus has only gotten even better. I would call it exceptional for the Mark II. It's now driven by 4XD linear motors. Something else that I really like is if you're shooting with a Sony Alpha, you can use clear image zoom to get an extra 1.5 zoom out of this, which essentially turns it from a 16 millimeter all the way up to a 50 millimeter lens, which for a single lens with really high optical quality and the ability to adjust in between is pretty badass. Something else that's great about this lens is you'll see at 35 millimeters, the extension of the lens is all the way in, and when you move it to 16, it only goes out a little bit, so it doesn't throw off a gimbal much at all. You could set it right in the middle and get your gimbal balanced, and it's not gonna adjust much in either direction. So when I walk out of the house, the lens that I have attached to my A7S III most often is the 16 to 35 because I'm usually vlogging a lot or I'll be in tight spaces, so I'd be able to go all the way out to 16 millimeter. You can capture so much. The reason that this is one of my favorite zoom ranges is because at 16 millimeters, it's really easy to go ahead and get a super wide shot that's more than wide enough for vlogging, for example, which I do a fair amount of. And then you have everything from 16 all the way up to 35. 35 is actually one of my favorite focal ranges overall, because if I'm the one behind the camera, it's wide enough that you can not only get your subject, but you can still get a lot of the environment, which helps tell the story. And then you can always walk up to get closer, or you can crop in and post. But there's something about the 35 millimeter focal range that I really appreciate. For me personally, it feels cinematic. There are definitely cheaper E-mount zoom lenses out there in this focal range, but I think it's safe to say this one is one of, if not the best you can get. Yep. Yep. Okay.